In my retelling of the Psyche and Eros or Cupid myth, I really liked a couple different aspects about it. It was really quite fun trying to spin it into a more common day thing. But aspects that stuck out to me was that the importance of trust that they have, and it's very interesting how he was able to build a trust without even being seen, and like the importance of like that relationships are deeper than the surface level, and I think that's so common in a lot of things. But the importance of it and how it was shown through this myth, especially. I think it also shows how dangerous beauty can be because beauty is what got her into this to begin with. But because they ignored beauty, they were able to have such a great relationship, which is really cool to see how that played out with both sides of that myth with this. Another thing that could be seen with culture in this myth, besides their view on beauty, would be the role of the gods. The gods were the whole reason this kind of got spun because Venus was jealous. So I think it shows a really personal aspect about the gods. They're not this imposing figure, they're a very real figure with real emotions and that don't necessarily fit any one role with how they act. They act very like we do humanly, which is very interesting coming from a Western point of view of like when you think of God and goddesses, how they are in the Western portrayed very mindful and very respectful and reserved. The Greek gods very much felt more like just regular humans that just happen to be immortal, happen to have powers. Um, I think perseverance is such an interesting thing to be seen with this too, because of Psyche's perseverance through the trials, and just her personality. She was able to get help through them, but then she was also able to win Eros back because of her perseverance. If she had not persevered through the trials, she probably would have had to work a lot harder and maybe not even been able to win him back, and then would never have had that relationship with her husband again. Probably wouldn't have even had a husband, and who knows what Venus would have done after that. Yeah, the Greek cultures are so interesting too, and how they had the relationship of men and women. I think that can all be shown with so much of it, how it played out between Psyche and Eros, how their relationship was specifically, um, how he cared for her, and her job was more to care for him and around the where they were. That he was out and about and she was more centered at home, I think kind of reflects how the time was pretty typical for the women during the Greek, but during this time in Greece. Um, I personally like the story. It's just interesting, and this one just seemed the most fun to swing because of the range of Psyche and who she was. Just seemed like the most interesting to write about too, is in a more common language rather than being more proper, and then also just taking it from she didn't know who her husband was or that what Venus was planning or any of those things that you know Venus was planning on having Cupid come and kill her in that turn. So she didn't know any of that. I'm sure she would have learned it over time in this myth, but her from her specific point of view, those things were left out, which made it a little interesting about how you see places pieces of the important thing play together, but maybe not from her perspective, how it would have worked out. Um, yeah, I think other than that, I think it's really interesting that like, this is this portrayal between the perseverance and then also like this standard of beauty. Um, just looking at how that reflects on even today, like what does our standard of beauty? It changes. I feel like so common, like so quickly, how the standard of beauty can affect so many things. If you are very beautiful, it can help and harm. But on the other side, if you're not considered like the cultural beauty standard, then things can be seen sometimes more difficult from you, but maybe you have more trust because if people actually do, you don't feel like it's just because you're pretty. It's just very interesting seeing both sides of the coin, and you kind of see that in this myth specifically because her beauty gets her into it, and then him not wanting to see it kind of is the other side of that. They were able to build a relationship without even having to deal with beauty as a standard, or an issue of something that I'm sure everybody's dealt with relationships and trying to navigate that whole scene.